So we've already seen a couple preseason games from the Golden State Warriors, and just off of those 2 preseason games so far, if you're seeing this the day it goes up, I'm feeling a little bit more confident in this team than I was during the offseason, I will say. These preseason games have included a win at the buzzer by Lindy Waters, and a fairly convincing double-digit win over the Sacramento Kings. But in preseason, you're not really focusing on the results of the game. You're mainly focusing on what you're seeing from the actual team, mainly in the first half, because that's when a lot of your rotational pieces from your team are actually going to be playing. And we're already getting to see sort of what the Warriors' ideology is going to be coming into the season. And it's very clear that there is a huge emphasis on three-point shooting. In the first preseason game, the Warriors took 48 three-pointers, and in the second preseason game, they took 52. They're sort of going the 2023 route, which is pretty surprising considering how that season ended. But I do feel like it is sort of a trend in the right direction as long as you have other areas of the game that can back up that amount of shooting. You don't want another Houston Rockets situation. But focusing specifically on the shooting, which we'll get to the other stuff in a minute, I'm not really too sure what to make of it so far because the 2 games that we've played have been extremes on both ends of the spectrum. The first game, they shot 11 for 48 from 3, and in the second game, they shot 28 for 52 from 3, which is actually a record for the franchise in any game, preseason, regular season, playoffs. Just that's the most three-pointers that they've ever hit in a game is 28. And so there's not really that much that you can actually take away from that, at least on the make side. But on the attempts, it definitely seems like they are making a big emphasis on getting a crazy amount of open threes this season, which they have been doing. Even in the first Clippers preseason game when they shot 11 for 48, it was a lot of really good open looks for a lot of really good shooters that they just added in the offseason. Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton, Beatz, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, which we'll get to later. But it just seemed like they weren't able to knock the open looks down. And so I never really was concerned about that, but they're also not going to be making 28 per game. But in terms of their actual ideology coming into the season, that seems to be a main focal point of what this offense is going to consist of. And I feel like that's the right way to go, especially with all of the players that you recently picked up and their specific skill sets. And speaking of the new additions, we've gotten a chance to see a lot of minutes from guys like Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, and it does seem like they fit right in with this team. I do think that that was something that we sort of expected, especially guys like Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton, just because of what they provide. Buddy Hield as a shooter, ability to create his own shot off the dribble, which is something that's really underrated about his game. Being able to pass and relocate out for 3-point attempts, which is something that you were going to be missing with the loss of Klay Thompson. And D'Anthony Melton, who can also create his own shot, as we saw specifically in the Kings game, but also what he's going to be able to provide defensively for this team, perhaps being in consideration for being, one of your main point of attack defenders when the season starts, provided Andrew Wiggins is back and healthy, which him nothing but the best. A really rough couple years for him, but all reports and all signs seem to point towards him coming back in the near future. But he's one of those players that seems to fit right in. He hit a couple threes in the Kings game that were just quintessential Warriors offense. There was a play in which they were trying to run something, it broke down, it didn't really go anywhere. They got the ball back up to D'Anthony Melton at nearly the logo, and he just pulled, no hesitation. He hit that 3. There was a play in the second quarter where he had gotten a pass from Draymond Green in the corner and even contested, pulled with no hesitation, hit that one as well. Really, a lot of the 3-point attempts that we've been seeing from them have been no hesitation. There's not really a lot of second guessing when they're taking a lot of these shots, which you expect from guys like Steph, Buddy Hield, guys like that. But it's definitely promising to see that from a lot of your younger players, especially the ones that are coming in from last season, mainly Brandin Podziemski, which I've been pretty impressed by him in preseason. I know that his shooting numbers aren't necessarily there yet, but I think that once those shots do start to go in, he's going to be looking like a much better player than he is right now because he's doing pretty much everything else right. There's been a lot of plays where he's the main ball handler in pick and roll, and there really isn't that much time in the decisions and the processing that is actually going on. There were a couple plays in the first preseason game where he shot 1 for 9. He would just come off of pick and roll and just instantly go into a pull-up 3, which is something that you didn't really see from him last season. A lot of his pull-up 3s last season were off of step backs or just in isolation isolation. And you can see this season it's really sped up, like the amount of time that he's actually taking to decide what to do. And that has been pretty apparent with his overall playmaking, because in the second game, that was on full display. He had 8 assists in the game against the Kings, and a lot of them coming off of pick and rolls, but the passes that he was making were drastic improvements over last season. There were plays in the first half specifically where he again would just get the ball and instantly know what he was doing. There was a play in the first quarter where they doubled off of him 1 pass away to trap Steph Curry. Steph got the ball to him. De'Aaron Fox had to rotate over. He pump faked. De'Aaron Fox flew by, but instead of taking the shot, he made the extra pass really quickly, and it was a great look for Draymond Green. There were a bunch of plays in the second half where, as I said before, he was doing a lot of playmaking off of pick and rolls, specifically with Trace Jackson Davis, and it was just really insane to see the types of reads that he was making so quickly, because you don't usually see reads like this from guys in their second season, especially not guys that weren't a primary facilitator in the season before. There were plays where he came off the pick and roll and instantly knew where the help was coming from. He would throw a crazy laser skip pass across the court, and Moses Moody actually got a couple of corner threes off of these types of passes, once in the right corner and once in the left corner. There was another pick and roll play where he drove in, pump faked Alex Len, but since there was so much traffic and the defense had essentially collapsed, he made the extra pass to Jonathan Kuminga on the left wing, and he got a wide open look off of that. Speaking of which, Jonathan Kuminga looks definitely different in terms of what his shot diet is probably going to consist of this season. He's been taking a lot more threes, especially off of like screen actions. They actually ran a split action for Jonathan Kuminga in the third quarter, which was crazy. Did not see that at all last season. Even though he didn't hit the shot, I feel like that's just indicative of the types of shots that he's actually going to be taking, or at least more of. Obviously, it's probably not going to be the majority of his shot diet as it's 3-pointers coming off of split actions, but it definitely seems like his offense is going to be expanded beyond just the catching the occasional lob or bullying mismatches in the post, which there still will be some of that, but it's clear that he is just working on expanding his game. He was 4 for 7 for 3 in the first Kings preseason game, and a lot of those were coming off of screens, coming off of extra passes, and it's going to be really interesting for me to see how that actually translates to the regular season, and more specifically, will it translate for a whole season? There have been some things that I have noticed that I don't really know what to make of yet, specifically Kyle Anderson. Now, Kyle Anderson, it was always sort of going to be one of those weird acquisitions. I felt like you understood his value as a passer and, a connective piece, a defender, but they started talking about running him potentially at the center position in certain lineups. But it's just, I'm not too sure what his place on this team is actually going to be. It doesn't seem like there are a bunch of lineups where he just fits seamlessly into. There are lineups that he fits, but not as seamlessly as D'Anthony Melton or, other players like that. And so I feel like it's going to be tougher for him to find minutes in certain situations. He's still going to play, obviously, but that would be the only thing that I would be concerned about. He is a little slower than a bunch of guys on the team, and so it is going to be interesting. As I said before, he will have value on the team still as a passer and as a connective piece on the floor, defensively especially, but you're not really sure where he's actually going to be able to find the minutes just because of that aspect, and because of the fact that he's not going to be a reliable floor spacer, because while he can shoot it, there's not going to be a whole bunch of situations where he's just able to get a shot off because it's that slow. And that's really been his issue anywhere that he's been in his career. He can hit at a reasonable rate when he's wide open, but it's just the amount of instances where that actually happens is the issue. But going back to the young guys, Moses Moody looks great. There were actually a lot of plays in the Clippers game where he looked really good, especially defensively. Got 2 blocks, 4 for 9 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3. He did sort of tail off in the Kings game, but it's not really something that I would be concerned about. It's just that he was missing shots, and also just consistently not having a reliable role on this team, even in preseason, is something that I think that he's still adjusting to, no matter, what this team says. It's very clear that the inconsistency in his play time has been a factor in his entire career, the last 3 seasons. And so I don't really know what to make of him yet, because, and I don't really know if I want to put too much thought into it, because I don't even know what his role on this team is going to be. I don't know if he's even going to play. Kevon Looney looks slimmer, but we haven't really seen too much new from him so far. There's a lot of talk especially on media day and in the offseason about him potentially taking more threes. He had said in his media day interview that he was taking hundreds of threes a day in preparation for this season. And so I feel like that is going to be something to look forward to. If he is able to be a floor spacer for this team, that is going to be huge, but that's something that's yet to be seen. Although he has been taking more mid-range shots in preseason, it might be a case like Mo Spates in like 2016, where he starts off the season taking more mid-ranges, and then as we go to like the halfway point, he starts extending his range out to the 3-point line. I don't know. That would just be my guess. I don't think that he's going to come into the season shooting 3-pointers. But overall, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far from this team. There is the concern about who is going to be the second option on this team. I feel like, all things considered, it is sort of leaning towards Jonathan Kuminga or Brandin Podziemski based on what I've seen so far and the shot diet that these dudes are going to have. I think it's going to be Jonathan Kuminga, especially considering the fact that Brandin Podziemski is probably going to be coming off the bench for DeAnthony Melton, who I'd imagine the Warriors are going to be utilizing him as the main point of attack defender alongside Andrew Wiggins when he is eventually back. And that's sort of the issue that I'm having in gauging how good this team is actually going to be, is that we don't know what Andrew Wiggins looks like right now through really no fault of his own, despite some of the crazy that I've seen from this fan base. Some of you should be ashamed of yourselves, but we just don't know what this team is going to look like without him out there. Because while he did have a down year offensively, and that may also be attributed to everything that happened last season with him in his personal life, he was still fairly solid defensively. It was definitely a step down, like a noticeable step down from 2022, but he was still serviceable on that end of the floor. And so I'm interested to see what the team looks like with a piece like that back in the rotation, because it's clear that that's going to be their main focus, is 3-point shooting and defense, which they haven't really had a solid mixture of either of those since 2019. I would say 2022, I don't think that team is as good of a shooting team all around as this team is gonna be, but they were obviously the best defense in the league. 2023, it was basically a complete flip-flop. 2024 with the same thing, where they were shooting a lot of threes and they were making a lot of threes, but they were noticeably worse defensively. I feel like they are definitely in a spot to be able to at least compete for a playoff spot. The West is really stacked right now, and so I don't think that I can necessarily make a reliable prediction of what seeding they're gonna be. I feel like I can only predict the win total. For me, I'd say that the Warriors are around that 45 to 50 win mark again. They won 44 in 2023. They won 46 last season, which was only good enough for the 10 seed, which has never happened ever. The Nuggets are worse with the loss of KCP and with Dario Saric being their main backup big, so they will probably see a decrease in wins. The Timberwolves have now Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, so there's no real telling what that's gonna do to their win total. I don't think that they're gonna win 56 games like they did last season, but I don't think that it's gonna be a dramatic decrease. There are gonna be some teams that are just not gonna win as many games, and so I feel like that is gonna be a huge factor into where this team actually ends up. Even if this team ultimately does not do anything of value, I think that this is gonna be a more enjoyable season from last year, which, I mean, that's not really a hard bar to clear, but I just want fun basketball at the end of the day at this point, because it's pretty clear that we're not really confirmed to be one of those top tier teams. And so we'll wait and see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell to be notified when I upload. Comment down below what you want to see next. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.